what I believe after coaching 10,000 people is what we're really desiring. It's not about great things, but unique things.
Ken Coleman, you have engine. So that's what we got to figure out. Deepest heart desire.
Hi, Ken. Thanks for...
In 2005, with no experience, no degree, but a vision burning inside him, he dove headfirst into the world of radio, podcasting, and public speaking.
From high school football on a country station to interviewing icons like Dave Ramsey.
Now as a best-selling author and co-host of the second largest syndicated talk radio show in America, welcome to the story of a dream pursued and a purpose fulfilled.
Our greatness lies within our unique. We want to feel as though our day at work, that we are doing something that we are good at, we are doing something we enjoy, and we are producing a result that matters. This is what we want, and we want to be recognized for it. Using what I do best to do something I enjoy, to produce a result I care deeply about. Talent plus passion plus mission equals purpose. Because I believe in 5 minutes, I've explained what is one of the most complex questions in the world to answer. Why am I here? What should I do in my life? Use what you do best to do something you enjoy, to produce results you care about. The more you serve your team, the better you serve your team, the better the collective unit can serve the customer, and now that's a win. Your capacity to grow is completely based on your belief in your potential.
Welcome to Success Story. I'm your host, Scott Clary. The Success Story podcast is part of the HubSpot podcast network. I am a huge fan of HubSpot because they support entrepreneurs. A lot of entrepreneurs, founders, executives listen to this show. And for entrepreneurs that are trying to build, I have a question for you. Does it feel like your teams are getting pulled in a million different directions when everyone's digging in on different projects with different platforms in different places? It can be tough to stay focused on a common goal, and that throws a wrench into things. That's why HubSpot brings everything your team needs into one easy to use and easy to love customer platform. With it, they have everything they need to scale the business at their fingertips. So your marketers can write blog posts in a snap with AI and build better leads with in-depth campaigns. Sales can build connections and close deals faster with tracking tools and real-time performance insights. Service can get a hand from AI-powered chatbots for better support and more 5-star reviews. And everyone can deliver killer results and grow revenue faster than ever before. Because when your teams work better, your business grows faster. Visit HubSpot.com to get started for free today. Ken, thank you for jumping on. I really appreciate your time. I'm excited to do this. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, throughout your career, you've had multiple seasons to your career, but right now you basically help people live their best lives. You're a coach, you're a best-selling author. You're leveling people up across, work, life, purpose, all of it. So we'll go into tons of things that you coach people on, and you do the live coaching, which obviously before we jumped on, I was a big fan of just understanding your style of content because it's not easy to do. But let's sort of back it up a little bit. If you look back, childhood, early career, what was that inflection point that sort of pushed you down this path?
Yeah, my dad loved history, so history was always around me. Great men, great women, people that he looked up to, so he talked about it. So he was a lover of history. And then he was very intentional to always talk to my brother and I about finding our calling. It was just something that was talked about all the time. And you take those two influences, and the way I wrote about it years later, I thanked him in my first book, One Question, as I thank my dad for instilling in me a love of people who made history and a desire to make history myself. That's the way I describe it. And that really, when you said inflection, I think that's a great way of wording it. It were those two influences, because when you are very aware of people in history, and we could just kind of classify for this audience, great men and women who've done great things, and reading biographies, that's history. And great moments in history where transformative things happened to make the world a better place. Certainly in the American context, we have a lot less of that history. but throughout history, world history, American history, you can see that. And so when you appreciate that, I think it has a organic effect on you to go, well, where do I fit in this whole deal? And how can I make the world a better place? I don't have to be a world changer, but can I be a positive influence? And I think that just is a natural byproduct of paying attention to history. And, everybody's wired differently. You had half the audience is like, I'm math and science. And the other half of us are like, I kind of like in the history and in the verbal, the word side of things. It depends on what your jam is. But I also love history. And I kind of just fell right into that. My dad's love, I adopted that, if you will. And then again, and then on top of that, he was always challenging us to be our best, to make a difference in the world, to find your calling. And when you're young and you hear that and feel it, then you either reject that and go, that's nonsense, or that's too much pressure. And I just accepted it. And I've just been wired that way. I mean, I'm just telling you, man. I was 10 years old the first time I saw Ronald Reagan speak, and I'm not in any way being political here, but I was enamored by him accepting the nomination at the Republican convention and giving this speech, and this very positive outlook speech. And I, as a 10-year-old, I was like, that dude's cool. So I'm probably a little different and a little more of an old soul. My nickname in college was 40. They called me 40 because I was reading newspapers. So I'm going probably a little bit too deep, but that's just my disposition, very much affected by my environment. And so I think that's what set me on the path to, I want to make sure that I suck the marrow out of life. That comes from one of my all-time favorite movies. Robin Williams starred in, played Professor Keating, and when he has those young men lean in to that trophy case, and he says, and he talked about sucking the marrow out of life. I was like, that movie really affected me. So that's just kind of how the way I'm wired.
You touched on something, because I didn't know you were going to go there, but that resonates so much with me. When you look at people that have built incredible things through history, I've never looked at it through that lens, but I adopt a very similar mindset of, if somebody else has been able to do it, I can do it too. I have to reverse engineer how they achieve that, but there's opportunity there. When you look at the people that you coach and help and speak with today, do you feel like there's a larger gap in where they are now and what they think they can achieve than maybe even there was historically in the past 50 years? What's the enthusiasm towards accomplishing great things?
I think it's less about accomplishing great things, although that's exactly how every one of them would word it. So you're spot on. But what I believe after coaching 10,000 people is what we're really desiring is not about great things, but unique things. In other words, we all desire to make our mark. And Scott, your mark is very different than my mark. And if we are truly authentic in awareness of who we are and what our mark is, then it will, in fact, by definition, be unique. You and I could be in the exact same field, but because of our uniqueness, our contribution will be unique. So I think we all think, well, we want to be great, but what I really think we want is to be unique. And I think we want to find our niche, we want to fill it, and that is, in fact, great. In other words, our greatness lies within our uniqueness. So the great impact for a young girl who grows up maybe in a small town and all she ever wanted to be was a kindergarten teacher, and she goes for it and she does it, and she's the best kindergarten teacher that this community's ever seen, and she has impact on these kids, and they come back to her years later. That's greatness. But it's not greatness in the definition of what society tends to use the label of great for, which is power, wealth, notoriety, or fame. So I think what we want more of is, we all don't want power. We all don't want, notoriety. Many people do, but not everybody. I think everybody kind of wants some wealth, right? That's that, but that's all about freedom and autonomy. So I think that that's what I've seen. And so to the heart of your question, where's the gap? And the gap is confidence. The gap is confidence from where I am now to where I want to be. You build that bridge through confidence. Confidence spins off courage, but it is only after we are confident in who we are, what we want to do, where we can do it, how we can get there. Confidence in that's what spins off courage. And so that bridge is built with clarity first. The more clear I am to get the answers to those questions I just went through, then my confidence goes up because I now can see, to your point, okay, I can do something great just like these people did. And so now all of a sudden, confidence comes up in that gap where we are, where we want to be. It's like the bridge comes rising up on the back of clarity. And then we can walk confidently forward. And then when life throws the tough stuff at us, the delays, the rejections, the failures, we have a courage to keep going because we're rooted in this radical clarity of who we are, uniqueness, where we want to go. That's that sense of mission and value, where we can do it, how we can do it, all that kind of stuff, those questions. And that's what gets us to where we want.
Talk to me just so people understand, because they're listening to what you're saying. They're trying to understand how they can achieve this in their own life. And I find some of the best ways to do it is to walk through, for example, how you came to this confidence and clarity, because this is not your first version of your career. This took years to discover.
That's right. Well, so for me, excuse me. So for me, I was in a season of life in my early 30s where I made a departure from this direction, this path that I had been on since the age of 16. And that was, I really felt my calling was to serve the public as an elected official. So governor, senator, whatever, I mean, you're talking 16 here. So you're thinking, I got a shot at the White House, And so in my early 30s, a distaste for the political system as a whole led me to a real crisis of belief. In other words, do I believe that that's what I'm actually supposed to do? And I came to the conclusion, not right now, and maybe never. So now what? And so that's a very disconcerting feeling to be on this one path for a long time and all of a sudden come to a clear realization, that's not the path. So what path is it? And so I was friends with a couple of really awesome executive coaches that I had gotten to know, and they gave me their materials. They were like, these guys were partners, and they were like, hey, you can figure this out on your own. They quite frankly knew I couldn't afford their services. So they gave me their life mapping material. And I did the life mapping. In other words, I went back and I was in a place of confusion. Where am I supposed to be if not here? Which way? And I went back in the process of, I looked at what I'm really good at, began to look at, okay, what do I know? My whole life I've been complimented for this, and this. You begin to gather the facts. And so I'm really talented at these things. This is my bucket. It's not a big bucket, but I got a clear bucket. And that's not false humility, by the way. I am not the most talented guy, but I have a couple of really good power tools, and I realized that. So okay, that's good. And then I begin to go back and look at what's moved my heart, what made me angry, what made me sad, what made me happy. I'm looking for clues throughout my life because that gives you a sense of what you care deeply about. And so begin to gather that information. And that got me to a place where I realized I'm good at communicating, and I really enjoy the performative nature of that. In other words, the pressure piece. And I care deeply about people. So that's all I really knew as I'm doing this life mapping. Those clear themes were coming at me. And so as I begin to wrestle with it more, and I'm making a very long story as short as possible, that's how I was able to determine that broadcasting was a similar path to being a politician, a different application of what I'm good at. But there were similarities in what I care deeply about, which was the people component. So I grew up in a small church home. My dad was a pastor of a very small church, so we were lower middle class. I watched my mom and dad serve and love people from all races, all backgrounds. This was not a mega church. This was real church. I call this real church, loving and serving on people. My dad would clean the toilets on Saturday and preach on Sunday. I saw two people who cared about people, the true representation of what Christianity should be about. They just loving on people, man. Didn't matter what you had done in your life. They were like, God loves you. We love you. Come on. And that developed in me a real sense of loving and caring and coaching and cheering people on. So those were the early themes. And I was like, okay, if I can broadcast to do that, that's why I didn't go into sports broadcasting. I dabbled in it, but the sports broadcasting was missing the serving people piece. And so I was like, okay, the Dave Ramseys of the world and some of these podcasts early on, I was like, that's what I want. I want to broadcast to help people. And so that's kind of how I began on the journey.
You know, you mentioned something, because even when you went on this journey and you found all these different components of what you wanted to include in your vocation, in your job, in your life, there's still so many outlets for that. I mean, like broadcast is like 70% aligned, and then maybe a fun podcast could be 80% aligned, and then maybe live coaching is like 90 to 95% aligned. But even doing the work, like the fact that you were able to get to the point where you could look at this plethora of different careers and then start to see where you wanted to fit, that's already more work than most people do in their entire life. And you probably see this all the time. And I'm very curious, in this post-COVID gig economy, people were laid off in masses. People are comparing themselves to individuals on social media. I would assume that a lot of the people that you deal with are just tired, stressed, depressed, confused. What is the climate like right now for the majority of professionals and people that are just trying to figure out their life? Does it seem like this? Am I correct in assuming that it's much worse than it was 5 years ago? Like you're front line, so I'm trying to understand where people are at in 2024.
Yeah, well, the simple answer is the data is showing us that the world of work is getting worse. And this is Gallup. I mean, Gallup is the gold standard. I read everything Gallup puts out. Every year they put out a State of the American Workplace, and I read through it like it's the Bible, because it's the Bible as it relates to what American workers are saying. So there's no question that the environment of work, that's what I mean when I say world of work, it's gotten worse. There are a variety of reasons for that, and I could go down any tributary you want. But to answer your question very specifically, yeah, it's worse. And so what people want is autonomy. Now, autonomy, fancy word, just means freedom. And, Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He stole the idea of the pursuit of happiness. That was not his wording. He got that from John Locke, great British Enlightenment thinker. Locke got it from Socrates and Plato and all of the Stoics. I mean, so this idea of the pursuit of happiness tied to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, it's all one phrase. So he says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Liberty is very much tied to pursuit of happiness. And what he was saying comes from, again, all these great Enlightenment thinkers, and I've read all this stuff, so I don't want to nerd out too much on this, but that's where we see and understand autonomy. I want to live my life. One of the top 5 regrets of the dying, as written in a runaway bestseller by an Australian hospice nurse, was I didn't live the life that was really true to what I wanted to live. So when I say autonomy, I want to I've given you context. Now let's get back right into that. Okay. We want to feel as though our day at work, that we are doing something that we are good at, we are doing something we enjoy, and we are producing a result that matters. This is what we want. And we want to be recognized for it. So to the extent that that's not a present opportunity for workers, that's why we see the data year after year after year from Gallup that says 68% of the American workforce is not engaged. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean they hate their job. They're just not engaged. That's why quiet quitting took off, that term, because people just went, you just described in one sentence how I feel. I'm going to do an adequate job so I don't get fired, but I'm not coming in fired up, ready to go like you'd see a professional football player, a professional athlete that's coming in at 5 a.m. to hit the gym, studying film all day long. Why does an NFL player do that? They love the game. They love the game. They want to be good at the game. They want to stay at the top. All right, there are American workers that are like that, but the majority are not. 68% says that the majority are just kind of making it through. The reason behind that is the context that I just gave you a couple of minutes ago. Inherently, we desire to make a mark, and we want to be recognized for that mark, and we want to care about that mark. And so it's gotten worse. It's gotten worse and worse and worse because we have a leadership crisis in the American workforce, because the MO in American work is you do a good job and you keep doing a good job, and at some point I got to promote you, and after about 2 or 3 promotions, I put you in a leadership position that you might not want. You might not be wired to do it, and we're not even going to train you how to do it. And so this keeps perpetuating itself, but we wonder why people don't want to go into work. So I gave you a lot there, but I'm trying to answer that as holistic.
No, I appreciate it. I'm just taking it all in, and I'm just thinking about different ways to take this. And I really want to take it in the way that will hopefully help the most people possible that are listening to this, and say, like, putting their hand up and saying, yes, that's me. what do I do? But you speak a lot about finding purpose. So again, as a broadcaster and radio and podcaster yourself, you know that 2-pronged questions are definitely not supposed to be a thing, but I do have a 2-pronged question because I think it's important to give some context. So first thought is, you speak a lot about finding purpose. Do you think that, and this is just more me being curious than anything, do you think that the issue with people or not being able to find purpose is that they are fed the lie of, I have to achieve greatness and not uniqueness? That's the first part to the question. And then maybe, is there a solution to that? But that's a much broader thought. And then the second part to that question is, okay, how does somebody tactically start to find purpose, which is probably what you deal with every single day?
Yeah. All right. So first part, there's no question that when all we're thinking about is greatness in the terms of how culture gives it to us, and a quick review is that's power, prestige, or how many people know my name, how many followers, likes I get, and then wealth, way more money than everybody else, that becomes a very intimidating mountain to climb. So if all you're ever focused on is, I got to be great, I got to achieve great in the lens of these 3 categories, that can be overwhelming. It's like trying to climb Mount Everest with no equipment and no training. It's impossible. So yes, to your first question, the improper focus on greatness as defined by those 3 adjectives or those categories, it's mind-numbingly intimidating for so many people. They just go, I can't do it. Look around me. I can't be powerful. I can't be rich,
But I also don't like my current situation. And that's...
So now despair, right? I can't get 1 million followers on YouTube. So despair sets in. So now I have to accept average or below average. Man, that's debilitating stuff. That is a huge problem. Now, so the answer, so if I begin to focus on uniqueness and I go, I came into this world hardwired with talents and things that I do well, and if I get some more education and some more experience, I can turn that talent into a sharpened skill. So handsaw to power saw, all right? And if I discover how to use that talent or skill in a way that I enjoy showing up. So if I'm creative and I got great creative and I learn how to be a creative and critical thinker, and I go, what are all the ways I can use that? And I go, okay, I could do this. Nah, that doesn't interest me. Oh, I can do design. Oh my gosh. So I love doing this type of thing with this talent. And then we go, what do I want to create with that combination of talent and passion? And that's that missional result. And I find myself being on mission. I want to create websites for products that I believe in. Great. What products do you believe in? I'm really into health and fitness. Great. Well, now all of a sudden, I take that talent and I do something I enjoy, which is the graphic design, but I'm doing graphic design that promotes a product or a service that I have a connection to. I am on purpose. I have no problem getting out of bed on Monday morning because I'm using what I do best to do something I enjoy, to produce a result I care about. Let me say that again. That's purpose. Using what I do best to do something I enjoy, to produce a result I care deeply about. Oh, that's it. That's the sound you'll hear. I mean, I'm just telling you, it's as simple as it gets, and that's my methodology. Talent plus passion plus mission equals purpose. So, to get to the second part of your question, hit me with that one more time because I want to make sure I heard it, but I want to make sure I get the minutiae of that.
Well, no, you actually, you really did answer the first, you went into it. It was really just, what is the first step that somebody can take towards figuring out what their purpose is once they understand that their purpose doesn't have to be what society shoves down their throat? Okay.
Your focus is not greatness, it's uniqueness. And when I focus on uniqueness, and I gave you that this is how we figure it out, so that what I'm good at, talent, what I enjoy doing, passion, and results that I care deeply about, mission, when I understand that, and we have a great assessment called the Get Clear assessment that comes with the book, Find the Work You're Wired to Do, and I believe in the wiring. Those are the 3 wires. When I find that out, Scott, then I can look out into the workplace and I can look at multiple job descriptions in multiple industries and go, does that path allow me to use what I do best to do what I enjoy to produce results that I care about? And then all of a sudden, remember I talked earlier about that bridge between where we are and where we want to be? Well, it relates to finding purpose in work so that I can get great fulfillment and also make a good chunk of money, my max. Whatever my max is going to be built on using what you do best to do what you love to produce results you care about. That's where you're going to get your greatest performance, greatest engagement. So that's the simple plan, and it's doable because it's actually understandable. If I could snap my fingers, I would put that curriculum in every school in America, what I just explained, because I believe in 5 minutes, I've explained what is one of the most complex questions in the world to answer in such a simple way. Why am I here? What should I do in my life? Use what you do best to do something you enjoy, to produce results you care about. So here's what's going to happen. Great proficiency, tremendous passion, meaning and money, baby.
Hey guys, Scott here. I just wanted to take a quick moment to say a heartfelt thanks to every single one of you. 6 years of this show, and it's really all because of you. Your listens, your support, your shares, it's what keeps this thing going. When I started, I had no idea how big this would get, how many lives we touch, the stories we share, the lessons that we learn together. It's truly humbling, and I believe that we're building something really special here, a community where no one has to reinvent the wheel. We're all in this together, learning and growing. And here's my ask. If you love this show, if it's made a difference for you, please share it with somebody who needs it. Tell a friend, post on social, whatever works. It's the best way to keep this thing going strong, bring on even better guests, and share more life-changing wisdom. And you can find us on all the spots. So you can go to successstorypodcast.com if you like listening to podcasts. If you like video, you can go to YouTube. It's youtube.com/c/Scott D. Clary, or the newsletter.scottdclary.com. Just spread the word. I'm eternally grateful for each and every one of you. Let's keep learning, let's keep growing, and let's keep making this world a little bit better together. All right, let's get back to the show. I also think that it's very important to highlight that you didn't just say, go start a business that does this thing.
Nothing to do with that at all. Might be your gig, but it might not be.
Yeah.
Because guess what?
Yeah.
Let's take that out. I've done segments on my show where I'll talk about, if you struggle with this, and this, don't ever start a business. In other words, Entrepreneurs are wired differently. Entrepreneurs are wired with a specific set of talents, hard skills and soft skills, heavy on the soft skills. They're just wired differently. And if you're not wired that way, you shouldn't try to be an entrepreneur.
There's always this gap between like intrinsic motivation, like you just mentioned, and then these external extrinsic motivators like money really is the main thing. And I think that we'll move on to something else because I don't want to beat this to death, but I think that the issue that people have is they think that the only way to feel internally fulfilled and sort of go and bridge that gap is to build their own thing, is to become an entrepreneur. Because there seems to be this hate for 9 to 5 and W-2 and employment that I think is incorrect. I also agree with you that not everybody should be an entrepreneur or even needs to be, or even needs to adopt the version of entrepreneurship that seems to be the Stanford dropout, go balls to the wall. Hopefully you find a way to make money in the next 6 months. And if not, then you have to go back to work. There's so many, life is not so black and white. That's the takeaway. And I think there's a lot. Okay, let's see. Where do we want to go next? You speak a lot about, there's all these different leadership principles that you speak about. And one thing that you speak about often is servant leadership. And I think that's a very noble principle. And it's important. But let's talk about maybe a contrarian view to that. How to be a good leader when times are tough, when things aren't working, when the idealistic version of leadership doesn't exactly fit when shit's hitting the fan, which is really when a leader has to show up. And I'm asking this question because I think you can be a good leader in your own company, maybe a good leader in your community, in your workforce. But I find that when leadership falters, and we see it at every level, to the leaders of government and leaders of company, leadership falters when things are hard, not when things are easy. So how do you walk through the idea of servant leadership or idealistic leadership in a tough situation when maybe you have to make hard decisions?
I love how you frame this. I really do. No one's ever asked it that way. So I'm going to embrace your contrarian question and say, you can be a servant leader in the worst of times. And I think it's the way you probably perceive servant leadership as it's idealistic. And I'm going to say it's not idealistic. It's actually the most practical style of leadership. Let me give a metaphor. I believe that another metaphor besides servant could be coach. If you lead like a coach, I think it is still the essence of servant leadership. I'm going to give you two at a time because I love how you've challenged that. It's a good conversation. I'm also going to throw out the metaphor of commander. Instead of coach, I'm going to go the coach route and the commander. I'm going to give you both at the same time. I believe, prove to you that is servant leadership. So let's take the coach, the hardest of times. A team is in a losing streak, or a team has got a big game coming up. All the marbles are riding on this fan base. He may lose his job. You know the pressures. We can understand this. And that coach has still got to serve his team. So let's put it this way. That coach has got to sit there in a very challenging time where a win, a W is a must. Got to win. Hard times. Tough opponent. 3 or 4 injuries, our best players. You get it. It's just adversity everywhere. That's what you're getting at. Can you be a servant leader in adversity? The answer is yes, you should be. I just don't think it's this meek, hey, can I get you a hot towel? We're not talking about a flight attendant servant. We're talking about a true servant meets the needs of the master. And so if I'm going to serve my team, if I'm the leader, I'm going to serve my team. And that coach in that situation has to ask himself and his coaches, what does our team need right now? We are surrounded by adversity. So one of the team needs in the scenario we're talking about is there's probably some guys on the team that need some confidence. I got to figure out how to serve confidence up to them. I got to inject them with some confidence, some belief. That's what this player, or maybe our defensive unit, they need some belief. I got to serve them some belief. I got to get them some belief. All right? Let's go to the commander example. I think of Saving Private Ryan as one of my all-time favorite leadership movies. You know, Tom Hanks plays the erstwhile humble leader, you know. But there are multiple times throughout that movie, and for sake of time, I'm not going to describe a scene that we probably all can remember, but there are multiple times in that movie where he is in fact a servant. And what he is realizes, what does my team need right now? What does this unit need? They need a story. There's a classic moment where they're hunkered down and he can tell the guys are nervous and they're missing home, and he tells a story and he changes the vibe in that room. And it's a beautiful illustration by the director there of, in that moment, his team needed some hope. So I'm going to challenge that view and say the servant leader, it's not about style. Servant has nothing to do with your temperament or that you're meek or that you're lowly. No. A servant leader is maniacally focused on, what does my team need? What does my unit need? What does this corporation, what does this company need? This division, what do they need right now? And when you can think of it that way, in the lowliest terms of a servant, and that's why that term is so powerful and it's used to describe a servant leader, because a servant was at the lowest level of humility and their entire existence was to provide for the needs of someone else. When you flip that from the lowly servant to the leader, takes on that mindset of, my job is to make sure my team has what it needs to win. So I've got 20 people on my team. What does Scott need to do his job really well? Maybe Scott's got some stuff going on in his personal life that is tough stuff, and he's not a robot. He's a human that's dragging some crap from his personal life into the office because he's a human. And so what does Scott need right now? Scott doesn't need more resources at work. You know what Scott needs? Scott needs a long weekend. I think that's what servant leadership is. It's this maniacal focus on, what does the team need and how can I serve it to them? So I do think it's ideal. In fact, I think servant leadership in the hardest of times is the best way to go, because it's not you in a posture of, I've got to figure out all the answers. No, in a time of adversity, I want to know what the team says they need, because I think it's going to inform what we need to do as an organization and what we need to do.
You know what I think? I love that. It's a very, very well described scenario, and I think that you're 100% correct. I think that the concern that I have with leaders and crises situations is that the human nature is to default to a command and control style when shit hits the fan. So because you listen, you speak to entrepreneurs, founders, CEOs, executives, managers, directors all the time. So for people that are listening to this, they may not even be aware of how they are going to default or the leadership style they are going to default to, except when something bad actually happens. And by that time, I would assume sometimes it's a little bit too late to change your style or to train or to prep yourself. So you dealt with a whole bunch of leaders going through COVID. Somebody who's listening now, who's a leader, who manages people, has direct reports, who has employees, what's the training or the work they have to do so that when shit does hit the fan, they can do exactly what you said?
Okay, a couple of things. Number one, get in a rhythm of regular conversations with your team. And it's driven by two questions that can have derivatives, but two main questions you need to ask of your team every week, individually, and if you want, collectively. The questions are, number one, how are you doing? Scott, how are you doing? You burned out? You tired? I know your mom went through something. I got to know enough about you and to be able to ask about that. And they begin to see, I genuinely, as the leader, care about you as a person. How are you doing? The more you ask that question and the more they open up to you and they see that you care, guess what happens? Their trust level in you goes up big time. Because now they go, Ken is for me. I'm not a unit of production. He actually cares about me as a person. And that will allow them to answer the second question much more honestly. Because this is the breakthrough in the corporate workplace, any leader, any position, any industry. The second question is, how can I help you win in your job? Now, most people will not answer that question honestly the first, second, third, fourth, maybe fifth time. Keep asking. They may give you some surface stuff. The more you keep asking, as a result of asking the first question, and by the way, acting on it. So Scott says, my daughter's got a scare right now. We got some medical testing going on. Would it be best if you took 2 or 3 days? Because we can cover for you. We'll figure out a way. You tell me what we need to do in the next 2 or 3 days so we don't drop the balls that you're carrying. But I want to give you 2 or 3 days. Just take some time with your wife and your daughter. And yet, man, let me tell you something. That's huge. And so understanding what's going on, what you're dealing with, and acting on it, then builds trust. And then they begin to say, well, here's the reality. You moved me into this role 6 months ago, and I don't think we had adequate training. Not griping. I think I've noticed there's 2 or 3 things that I need this skill set. Can you give it to me, or can you give me some training? And I think it's gonna take care of this gap I'm experiencing. Man, that is lifeblood for a leader to be able to know that information and act on that. All right. Mm-hmm. So those are the 2 primary questions that I would be asking, so that you begin to train yourself to the point of your question, so that when it gets tight or it gets adverse and it's a storm, everybody feels safe with you, the leader. And so they'll speak up and go, hey, I know your plan is to batten down that hatch, and this hatch, but I actually think we should put some sandbags over there. And they don't think that you're going to bite their head off, because they know you care about them enough to ask about them, and you've built some rapport, and they know that you care about their opinion too. And that servant leadership comes in and goes, what do you guys think we should do? I think we should batten down these 3 windows over here. What do you guys think? And because you've done those other 2 things I've talked about, in the moment, there's high levels of trust. And the higher the trust is in calm times, the higher the trust will be in the topsy-turvy times, the adverse moments. And man, trust is huge in thinking clearly and acting clearly when your back's against the wall. And that's huge. And so then we're able to act, I think, in a much more calm and trusted way. And in adversity, everybody's for you, and they're telling you what they really think. And they go, hey, listen, I think that's okay, but I think we better put some sandbags over here first. And I think we do that. It gives us time to do this. And you go, yeah, I actually think that's great. And so you're not acting alone. Back to something that you asked me earlier, I want to say this. The default for leaders is to solve, not to serve. And I think if you serve, they'll help you solve better.
You know what else happens when you adopt this mindset and you build this trust and you serve to solve, you also solve this problem of meaningless work, and from the perspective of the employee, because now the employee feels like they can map out their career with you and plan their next steps with you and figure out where they want to end up. So not only is the employee going to feel like this particular season of their life has more meaning and purpose and potential future alignment, also as a leader, you're not going to be dealing with quiet quitters or people that are, taking interviews on lunch breaks, because now you have this rapport. So the goal is to solve this crisis from both sides. So you have to find your purpose, but also the leaders have to do their job, understanding that as this person is going through this career journey, they're going to be part of your organization. And to get the most out of them while they're part of your organization, you have to be acting this way. And then all of a sudden you create just a better version of work.
Yeah. And to your point, perfect point. When I, as a leader, serve my team well, we as a team are better equipped to serve the customer. And we can't forget all this servant talk and serving talk and go, wait a second. All of this leads to us actually serving the most important audience, which is the customer. If we're not serving the customer, we have no business, you have no jobs. And so it is a trickle-down effect. The more you serve your team, the better you serve your team, the better the collective unit can serve the customer. And now that's a win.
Talk to me. I know we've sort of danced around this, but I think that it's something that you speak about often, and I think it's an interesting concept. The psychological impact of meaningless work and it being psychologically torturous and outside of just impacting the organization and impacting the customers and impacting your personal career path, because there's so much more to it than that.
Oh, there's so much. I mean, it's about self-worth. Like, your capacity to grow is completely based on your belief in your potential. So I have to have belief in my potential for me to then realize my capacity to actually grow. In other words, once I realize I've got potential, then I begin to look into that and go, oh, so if my potential is here and I'm here, now I see the gap and I see where I can grow. And that has tremendous meaning in it. You know what I mean? In other words, self-worth. Yeah. So to the heart of your question, a person who doesn't believe that their job matters quickly starts to believe that they don't matter. I mean, that is a torturous thing that throughout history has been done in prison camps where, I mean, you talk about Viktor Frankl, who writes In Search of Meaning, the Bible on purposeful work, in my opinion, and he writes it largely while in a Nazi prison camp. And his goal is he gets up every day and he's trying to find purpose by rewriting everything that he believes and learning from what he's doing as he's moving one heavy rock from one side of the prison camp to the other. And then once that pile is transferred, they come back and do it again. You want to talk about meaningless work. And that was mental torture. It was psychological torture. So that's the heart of it. If I don't think that my work matters to me, I will eventually get to the point where I think, well, if it doesn't matter to me, I don't think it matters much at all. That means I don't matter. And now you're in a really scary spiral of depression that can lead to, I'm medicating in so many ways. And you asked me this question earlier on in the interview. One of the main differences in the world of work over the last 5, 10, 15 years is such a trap of meaninglessness. And that's why we see depression and all kinds of things, stress in the workplace, people going home, their physical lives suck because they're overeating or they're sugar, they're medicating through sugar or alcohol or you name it, man. I mean, all of the stuff we humans do that are detrimental to our physical, emotional, and mental selves is a form of medication. And I'm not trying to overstate this, but I believe if I could wave a wand and give every person in the world meaningful work, you would see a massive drop in those other areas of vices and detrimental effects.
Well, I think that one thing that I saw during COVID, which is so telling of what you just mentioned, is people would rather take a government paycheck and stay at home than do the jobs that they were doing. It's happened a lot. I mean, I'm Canadian. I think it happened down here with a whole bunch of stimulus checks or similar style programs. That's horrible. That's absolutely horrible.
Right, because why do you think that is? I know my answer. I'm curious. What do you think? Why would the human go, I'm going to take the government check as opposed to go out and chart my own path?
I feel like, so I've thought about this because it's so out of alignment with what I believe and who I am. Like, I look at work, even when I was starting in my career, like I would push my university classes to evenings and weekends so I could work during the day because I saw work as an opportunity for advancement. And I saw work as an opportunity to achieve the life that I wanted to achieve.
All right, there's the answer.
Exactly. So the more hours.
So you had a destination.
Yeah.
See, you had a destination. So let me take this to a simple little metaphor. Okay. If you're driving in a car and you told me right before we started recording that there's a massive thunderstorm in the Miami area, but so imagine you're out on a Miami freeway and I'm talking a deluge of water. You can't see past the hood of your car. What are you doing?
You're driving slow. You're not. You're putting on your hazards and pulling over.
You nailed it. You got the whole answer. I begin to slow down and eventually I pull over and I'm stuck waiting for the storm to pass. When you don't have a personal or professional destination, a direction in mind. Psychologically, emotionally, mentally, you do the same thing we do in the car. And so all of a sudden you go, I'll take the check because I'm not moving forward. I'm stuck. I don't know where I'm supposed to go. So gotta exist. And so it is existence becomes the primary function, not persistence and progress. Like, I just gotta exist, so I'll take the check. That's what's going on. There's a lack of direction, so they're stuck. Just like we would be in fog or rain. Happened to my voice all of a sudden. All right, sorry.
You can get some water if you want.
No, I'm good, brother. I don't know what happened. Maybe I'm too excited right now.
I just want to take a second to thank the sponsor of today's episode, HubSpot. Now, HubSpot has an incredible podcast network. Success Story is part of it. And if you like Success Story, you're going to love other podcasts in their network. One of my favorites is iDigress. It's hosted by Troy Sandage. What Troy does exceptionally well is in under 30 minutes, he helps eliminate complexity, complications, confusion in your business. He talks about frameworks, strategies that really work to help you achieve scalable and sustainable success. So you need to go listen to iDigress, one of the most useful podcasts for entrepreneurs and founders, part of the HubSpot podcast network, wherever you get your podcasts. No, that's good. I think that's such an important point. So the second thing that I think is really top of mind for people, and I'm just curious to get your opinion on this, is new technologies. And in my opinion, these new technologies are going to replace mediocre work. I don't think we're going to see mediocre work anymore. I mean, I've heard, I can't remember who said this, but the comment was, in the future, you will only be able to work on the things that you want to work on and not have to do work that you don't want to work, because that'll all be outsourced to technology. So given the fact that I don't think we'll see any more mediocre work going forward, because that can already be replaced to some degree, and it will be even further replaced, and the fact that you can only work on things that you want to work on, where do you see technology fitting into purpose, work, upskilling, development? People are scared of it. People are embracing it. Just from all the people you speak to, what's the general consensus?
I think that AI is not going to replace you, but a person who's better at using AI will replace you. I think that's the bigger concern. I think that there are going to be a sector of jobs that will be affected. Yes, I think a lot of your administrative tasks, obviously, we've already seen automation take a big step forward there. AI is going to continue to do that. But by and large, I think what's going to happen is, to your point, I love the way you said it, I just think everybody's going to become a gig worker, or let's call it a freelancer, probably the better term. I think everybody's going to be a freelancer. And I think the days of the resume are on their way out, and now it's going to be kind of a profile. What digital profile, can you show your work? It's about your brand. It's about how you do the work. In other words, an example of this is we're already seeing lawyers at law firms that are using AI so effectively to where the AI is replacing many, many hours of what they would have spent doing the clerical and the paperwork and everything. And you know what they're doing? They're pivoting, and they're building off of AI and say, AI can replace me on all this paperwork and minutia and all that. I'm going to go focus on the relationship with the customer. So I really believe that if you embrace AI, I think it's going to actually put a premium on the personal touch. And I think as AI becomes more and more of our everyday life, we will appreciate what it does for us from an efficiency and convenience standpoint. But as humans, we will crave the human touch. And I don't mean in this case the physical touch, but maybe that too. But I mean, you're going to crave talking to a human. And so I think those are two big takeaways. You leverage AI, leverage technology to specialize. One example I saw that I read in a LinkedIn article about this very topic is you're going to have a person who is scavenging for rare mushrooms. And they build a website in 10 minutes. And they start selling these mushrooms all around the world and making $250,000. That's a specialization. You're really good at foraging for mushrooms and reselling them to health nuts who love mushrooms. I just think the diversification and specialization is what is going to be the new way of working.
Then the last thing that I thought you'd have a comment on, because you've spoken about this again in your book, you speak a lot about dreams versus mirages. So genuine career aspirations versus unrealistic goals. That could be disheartening to some people because now they've bought into this whole concept of I'm going to find my purpose. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to align my skills, what I'm passionate about and what the market needs. But maybe I'm shooting too high, or maybe I'm looking at something that, I don't want it to sidetrack the thing that I have over here, the 9-to-5 that's paying the bills, and I don't really love it, but I don't hate it enough to quit. And I have a family and I have kids. And what if I, shoot for the moon and completely miss, and that quote of ending up in the stars doesn't apply, right? So what's the framework? What's the mental model to make sure that your aspirations are sound?
Well, do I have the talent to pull this off? Now, not the Super Bowl version, right? But do I have the talent to actually play football? And do I enjoy everything that goes into it? The working out, the eating right, the getting bruised and hit and cut, getting concussed every once in a while. Do I care deeply about winning? Am I driven, naturally motivated by achievement and winning? I have a competitive juice that must be met. I got to get that out. That's how we figure that out. Now, so we know we're wired for it. This is back to my methodology. I mean, am I wired for it? Like the kid that goes to try out for American Idol might love the idea of being famous and love the idea of singing in their shower. But if they suck, and Simon Cowell tells them they suck, they're not going to be a pop star. So that's why I say we've got to retreat to clarity when we have these big, big dreams and feelings. Is it a mirage or is it a dream? So I'm going to go all the way back to, do I have the raw talent? Do I have a legitimate, unbridled passion I'm willing to suffer? The root word for passion is pati in the Latin, and it means to suffer. Are you willing to suffer? Wait. And then, do you care about the result of this, of entertaining people or talking about sports, whatever? When I started out pursuing sports broadcasting before I got on the path that I'm on now, and this is the answer to the question in a very real story, I showed up at high school football games 2 hours before the game. I was doing play-by-play on the internet. 2 people were listening. The guy next to me who was doing the color, and my wife, because she's a good woman and wanted to affirm me when I got home. I showed up 2 hours before the game, Scott. I was interviewing coaches, and they were like, who is this guy? How did he get down on the field? And, I was like, I'm with Complete Game Broadcasting. They didn't even know we were doing it. I'm like asking them questions like I'm Jim Nantz before the Super Bowl. Why? Because there was purpose in the lowest rung of the ladder. And that's what that was. There was purpose because I knew if I was going to do it big time, I had to learn how to do it small time. And so I showed up early. I treated it like it was a Super Bowl. I listened to myself. I was like, that was awful. Don't do that again. I mean, I was doing the small stuff in order to determine whether or not I was willing to stay long enough to actually do the big stuff. That's important. So that's how you determine that. Is it a mirage or if it's a dream? Because if it's a dream, you show up 2 hours before a high school football game and ask way too many questions to see if you like this enough to eventually love it. See, we've got to understand that the mirage is a feeling. I think I'd like to do that, but then when I got to show up and do the hard work and prepare and start out at the bottom, and if I don't like it at the bottom, I'm not going to love it. It's the bottom line.
You got to put in the reps.
So that's how you know if it's a dream or not. If you are willing to suffer rejection, suffer patience, waiting is just suffering. My gosh, waiting is suffering. If you're willing to do that, it's a dream. And that tells you I am willing to show up on the lowest rung of the ladder and hang out for a while and get my teeth kicked in and all that crap because, gosh, I can taste it. And here I am today. The first day that I did my Sirius XM show was a national show, Sirius XM, and 2 months later I was in New York and they let me do my show from their New York studios. Man, this is glitz, it's glamour, it's down the hall from Howard Stern. I was doing my show prep, and I look up, and Al Roker was right across the hall from me doing his show, and I got emotional because it was in that moment that I realized that it was worth showing up doing the high school football and no one was listening and nobody cared, and I was away from my wife and 3 kids. I wanted it. I wanted it bad. It was a dream. That wasn't a mirage.
I love that. I want to bring out just a couple last stories, because I mean, you work with so many incredible people, and you answer all these questions live, and you coach. And I love stories too. So tell me a few, 1 or 2, whatever you can pick, some of the hardest conversations and live coachings that you've had to do. What are some of the most difficult things that you've had to deal with over, the years that you've been doing this now?
I think one of the most difficult moments I had was early on, when we were just on Sirius. We weren't on radio yet. We were Sirius XM, and we were podcasting it, and we were probably 5 months in, and I had not taken a call yet that was gut-wrenching. And it was the first gut-wrenching call I ever took. And I say it was difficult because it was all I could do not to sob into the microphone. That was difficult. And the story was, a guy called me, and he presented himself at the top of the call. He said, Ken, I've got 2 paths. I'm in technology now, and I've been in it for about 5 years, and I've seen some rapid growth, and I've got an opportunity right now to take a job, which in a couple short years would put me in a CTO position, major deal, big money, stock, all the accoutrements of professional life. He said, but I'm wrestling with this nagging feeling I have that I'm supposed to be a child therapist. And that's how he presented. And so cutting throughout got some more background. And at one point I just looked at him, and he was really torn. And I had a sense that he really wanted my permission to walk away from the big time technology future and go be a child therapist. But he was wrestling with, it was going to be a lot more time, a lot more money, because he had to get re-educated for that. You got to get a degree for that. You got to get some advanced degrees. And it was a path. And he was really wrestling with it. And I felt that his heart was saying child therapy, and his head was, of course, telling him, dude, what are you nuts? You're going to walk away from that. So at this point in the call, I just put it to him. I said, I believe there's something in your story that is compelling you, and it keeps coming up. There's a reason why the child therapist keeps coming up. And I'd never done this before. I'm new. I'm 6 months in. And I just felt it. And I said, what is that? And he broke. He started sobbing. Well, I was like, what have I done? And it was starting to get to me, when someone is that deeply wounded, and I knew something was there, and he garbled it out. He went, I was abused as a child, and I don't ever want that to happen to somebody else. But if it does, I want to be for those kids what my therapist was for me. And dude, he's like, I'm still at this moment a little bit choky on that, but he was sobbing while saying that. That took about 30 seconds to say what I said in 7. That was difficult, to sit in that moment with that guy and decipher. I don't think he needs me to say a whole lot. He needs to hear that, and he heard himself say it. And so I let the moment sit for a minute. It was very somber because, of course, it was live, and you just kind of let it breathe. And I just said, there's your answer, man. So find a way. Be smart about it. But you are supposed to stand in the gap and help other people become who you are now. And it was just, man, it was all I could do not to just cry. Yeah. That was probably the most difficult call I've ever had to deal with because of the sensitivity of it. And there's a time to stop coaching. And I did. And thankfully I was in the moment, was able to just go, man, there's the answer.
I would argue that you actually didn't stop coaching. You actually coached the way that people should coach. I think that you actually guided somebody through a really difficult moment, which I think is actually the most beautiful version of a coach. I think that just coach has had a different connotation associated with it, which is a whole other issue that I have with, air quotes, coaches that wouldn't have dealt with that situation in the same way.
Yeah, I just have learned that there's always a story from their story. When somebody presents an A or a B and they present as I'm leaning more towards B or I'm leaning more towards A, I have learned to go ask them, what from your past do you think is influencing this feeling? And I'm a firm believer that if you do the work that I talked about, that you've got the talent, and then your heart is overwhelmingly saying, and that's what passion and mission, what I love to do and the results I care deeply about are all heart.
Mm-hmm.
So I always tell people, follow your heart. When you're heading harder in a wrestling match, all I'm asking is do you have the raw talent that with training and experience you can pull it off? If the answer is yes to that, then you better follow your heart, or you're going to get to the end of your journey and you're going to regret. And I want people to get to the end of their journey and reminisce. And that's what that guy was facing in that moment. And it was so deeply rooted in a wound that he had healed from. And so he would have never been happy in technology because there was a deep abiding hole on his heart. And that's what we all long to do. Remember, we started at the talk thing going, people want to make their mark.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got a different mark they want to make, and not all of them are deeply rooted in really tough pain. But I would say that on some level, there's pain behind every purposeful direction. There's some level of pain. Could be the pain of frustration. Could be the pain of rejection, whatever.
I think that this is why you've done so well at the work that you've chosen to take on, because you lead with empathy, which is obviously that was sort of shown in that moment, but it's probably what's allowed you to go a level deeper than a lot of people, again, who call themselves coaches or try and support and guide people through career moments in their life, personal moments in their life. If you were going to look at what's made you so good at what you do, that was showcased in that moment and has been showcased in hundreds of moments ever since, when you guide people and help people and support people, and you just mentioned you go a level deeper and you look at what are the underlying things that are prompting this internal frustration. I want to pull out something from you that you sort of understood to be your superpower that can help, doesn't have to be other coaches, just help people go through their life, be better at guiding other people, because I think that's a very noble talent.
I think it's as simple as asking questions from multiple different angles. Dig until you hit the metal. That's it. I am very curious by nature. We all have a level of curiousness. I'm really, really curious. I was just in a meeting before this podcast where I'm meeting with my producer on some stuff, and we're trying some new stuff on my show, and he was pushing back on an idea that I just threw out there. And I could tell that he was getting a little, it wasn't ugly at all, but he was getting a little bit like, and I said, hey, I'm not saying that my idea is right. I just need to get a few more angles on this. And he laughed because that's how I'm wired. So I do it in a meeting as well. When someone says to me no on an idea and I don't feel like we've looked at it from every angle, then I keep asking questions. Well, what about this? Well, why not this? That's how I'm wired. I don't get to certainty as fast as other people, but when I get to certainty, I'm there. And I would say that is a superpower. I do have the gift of discernment, but it is the question asking to go multiple levels or maybe come from a different angle to verify that what I'm sensing and discerning is real. That's what helps me. And I think that will help us all. But that's when I have to coach people live on the air in 8 minutes, I had to learn how to do it quickly. I mean, me coaching you in an hour, it's not even fair.
Yeah.
Especially when I can see you.
Yeah.
Because I can read things. Most of my coaching has been done on the phone. So you have to listen for things And so I just have learned how to ask questions and ask it multiple different ways to verify what I'm discerning. And then I reveal to them what I'm seeing. And they then tell me if I'm right or wrong. But at that point, I say, well, here's what I'm seeing or hearing. And they will validate or go, no, you're wrong. Okay. But most of the time I'm right because I don't reveal what I'm seeing or hearing until I have dug until I've got to the bottom of the hole and we're hitting pay dirt.
I love that. What did we not go into that you think would be valuable for the audience? Because you went into so many different things. What did we not go into?
There's one topic that has blown up on my Instagram, and it was micromanagement. 10.2 million views of a 30-second video of me saying micromanaging is about fear. If you've got a micromanager, you need to understand something. They're fearful. They are terrified. They're holding. So that might be a fun topic. I don't know if you've got a leadership audience because it's instructive for somebody who's dealing with it. Like, how do you manage that micromanager is an angle we could go.
I think no. By the way, it's. So I thought we put that to bed with the leadership conversation, but maybe people, I think people still feel like, listen, there's bad leaders everywhere. I don't think we have a shortage of bad leaders. So yeah, we can talk in again.
I'm spitballing. You go where you want to go.
No, I don't mind. I mean, we've gone through so many different things. So that's a hot topic. So why is micromanagement still a hot topic? I feel like we've gotten over micromanagement. Like, I feel like it's a thing of the past. Like, I feel like it's not supposed to be applicable anymore.
Yeah, but it's still a massive problem. And the reason is, we were talking earlier about people desire autonomy. So autonomy, you can be free and still work for somebody else. But the sense of freedom is that, hey, Scott, I hired you to do this, okay?
Yep.
And I'm going to give you the tools you need to do it. I'm going to train you how to do it. I'm going to tell you how I want you to do it, when I want you to do it, but I'm going to let you do it. And then after you do it a few times, we'll do some review and we'll say, where do we need to get better? But that's not how it works. What we see is a fearful leader. Micromanagement still is such a big choking attribute. I call it a deadly trait of leadership because it is the response of a fearful leader. They're afraid because they don't have all the resources they have from up above, or they feel like someone's breathing down their neck, and they are trying to control a situation that they don't feel they have control over. And the only way they know how to control it is to what we call micromanage, which is, be over involved, overbearing. And they're not doing it because they're a bad person. They're doing it because they're a bad leader. And that may be the only model they've ever seen, number one. Number two, it could be because they are experiencing massive fear. And who among us is rational when we're fearful? What do we do when we're fearful? We try to take control of everything and remove every risk. And so the reason that will always exist is because of the human nature of people when they are fearful. And there's a lot of things to be afraid of in today's workforce. And so sometimes you have to lead up. So to the leader that may feel like, man, I am a little too controlling, I would tell you to do some work on yourself. Go see a therapist. Get to the heart of what are you afraid of? Now for those, and then by the way, once you get that, leaders, and you see that, oh my gosh, this is a blind spot. I'm afraid of this. So if I'm afraid of that, what do I have to do to remove that fear? It makes you a better leader. And that will also make you a less controlling leader. Now, to the person who is underneath a micromanager, this is tricky. And this could be a large portion of your audience. What do I do? All right, number one, you need to seek to understand what they're afraid of. Do your best to try to figure it out. In your one-on-ones with them, go, hey, what are some of your biggest concerns with our team? Or, there's some subtle ways to do this that don't make them defensive at all.
To manage up, which is really the hardest thing to do.
It's the very hardest thing to do, but absolutely essential sometimes, because you can't just leave every company where there's a micromanager. Sometimes you're going to have to be an adult. And I think the way you do it is seek to understand with some very smart questions and some observations. What are they most afraid of? All right, now that we know what they're afraid of, how can you address that with you? You may not be able to fix them, but you might be able to put a boundary up with you. So you go, oh, they're really afraid of not being communicated. So what am I going to do? I'm going to over-communicate. I've pinpointed that they're afraid that they don't know everything that's going on. So you know what I'm going to do? As it relates to me and my role and my relationship with them, they're going to know everything. I'm going to ask for a weekly meeting. I'm going to send them an email on Fridays, tell them everything on it. Manage that fear. And here's what will happen. They won't look at you anymore, and they will project their fear onto you. They'll go, I don't have to worry about Scott. Scott's the model. Guess what happens? They turn their attention away from you. And so at least makes your situation better. Maybe then that spreads. Maybe your coworkers go, what did you do, Scott? How are you the favorite? You go, I got news for you. I'm not the favorite. Guess what I did? I figured it out. They got a fear here. So I managed the fear. Things are great. You know, like we got to get involved. We got to roll our sleeves up and go, we have some imperfect people that are leading us. So that issue's been a hot button when I just mentioned it briefly on social media. And, you know, honestly, when you put something out and 10 million people are watching it and 40,000 shares in the comments, you know, like, I stepped on a nerve. So while the term is not new, it is very much and will always be an issue in the workplace in a leadership context.
I want to take a second and thank the sponsor of today's episode, LinkedIn. Now, let me share a quick story. When I was looking to hire for my team, I needed someone who not only had the skills, but also fit our company culture. I turned to LinkedIn Jobs and it made the process seamless. The quality of candidates I found was exceptional and it saved me tons of time. Having quality candidates to interview is essential and LinkedIn Jobs makes it incredibly easy to find them. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. It's a platform that connects you with professionals you won't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching but might be open to the perfect role. And did you know that 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites? If you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're missing these candidates. Plus, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours on LinkedIn. And they're always looking to make the process easier. They even launched a feature to help you write job descriptions. So if you're ready to find your next great hire, post your job for free at linkedin.com/excellence. That's linkedin.com/excellence to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I think an issue is sometimes when we pontificate from an ivory tower that work is this way or that way, it doesn't really reflect the realities of the day-to-day of somebody who does have a shitty manager. And that's why it's such a big problem. I have one more. I was just looking at your Instagram because now I'm like, oh, this is gold. But there's one more thing that prompted a thought. So the second largest, I guess, or one of the largest posts that you made was about promotions and pay raises. And I thought back. I'll tell you a very brief story. So there was a point in my career where this is not directly tied to this, but it's also something that probably happens to people. So I wanted to move up to like the next level. So I was in sales and I was selling to small business and I wanted to move to mid-market, and like the manager was on board and was killing the numbers and my director was on board. And if I had moved internally to the organization, I would have gotten like an X% pay bump. However, if I'd been recruited from outside the organization, I would have been making like $10,000 or $15,000 more, as opposed to an internal promotion for the exact same job. So what ended up happening is my director said, give me your resignation and I'll hire you externally. It was like pure workplace BS politics, like so stupid. Anyway, it happened, got the pay bump. It was great, career progressed from there. But there's so much BS in corporate America that people deal with that I don't think the average person knows what to do about. Like that was a mentor, the director was a mentor to me. He guided me through this process, but so many people get screwed basically all the time. The other thing that I see people get screwed with is if you try and move up in a company, you'll get more money if you go somewhere else sometimes as opposed to staying in the company. And also, I think the post that went viral was promotion without pay. So all of these BS politics, companies so big, half of the company doesn't even know that this is happening in one of the departments. All these issues that people are real issues that people deal with in their careers that impact them financially. pick any of the 3 random examples I just mentioned, or the one that really went viral on your Instagram. What's your recommendation for people that are stuck in these shitty circumstances?
Well, I can tell you this. If you are being manipulated, then that's not going to change. And what you've just described is manipulation. Companies are desperate to fill a position. They can't pay you, so they come up with this promotion. We're going to promote you, but there's no pay. And so it's a manipulative play. It is a form of dishonesty. Simple. So if this is happening to you, it will continue to happen. So I'm not going to tolerate it. I would get your act together before you confront it, meaning have a plan. Because if you don't have a plan, it doesn't help you to confront it, then you're kicked out on the street. So you got to be mature. Mm-hmm. So I'd build a bridge, and if you feel like you got a bridge, you feel like financially you're okay and you can do this, or you feel like, okay, I'm going to line up a couple of things, I would confront it once and call it out. Because I think a lot of time leaders get away with it because we as employees aren't willing to have a difficult conversation because we're scared. But if you can remove that fear and go, I'm not scared, and I'm mature, and I breathe a little bit, I think a lot of things can change if we just have a difficult conversation with our leader. But they get away with it because we don't challenge them because we're scared that we're going to lose our job. And so then we go, I'm scared to do that, so I put up with it too long, and eventually I get to a point where I'm desperate, and then I just leave. And I don't necessarily do what's best for me there. Changing jobs sometimes is not the best way to move forward. And so it's worthwhile to at least have the difficult conversation without any kind of fear and see if they go, you know what, you just called me out on this and I feel like a real jerk, so I'm not going to do that. But left to their own device and you don't say anything about it, they get away with it. You know? And so that's a slippery slope. So that's how I would handle it. And then if we have the difficult conversation, we call them out on it respectfully and humbly and go, this is how I feel about this. This doesn't feel right. And if they react to it and they do the right thing, great, big win there. That lifts everybody. If they don't react, there's your sign. Now I can go, and I will not second guess that decision. Well, that's my prescription. That's the advice I'd give on the air if somebody called me and asked me that question. Don't just give up and throw your hands in the air. Many times leaders are making those decisions because they feel that's all they have, or they think it's the best decision. And if you just kind of show a little bit of, okay, I'll do it, that's not enough to make them second guess it. Challenge it. And many times you're going to find that they needed to be challenged to go, you know what, that is kind of a jerk move. I'm not going to do that. And many times you're going to find that their hands are tied and they're being told to do that, or they don't feel like they have any options, at which point you go, I don't want to be in an organization like this. Mm-hmm. You know, so that's the harsh reality.
I think that, you know, everything you want is on the other side of a hard conversation. And I think that everything that you do and really what I'm trying to do on this podcast is to make sure that people don't shrug off opportunity or circumstances in the moment that could seem so innocuous and really not that significant. But if you shrug off those opportunities or circumstances repeatedly, then you wake up and you're 65, 70 and you've gone your whole career not taking that next step, or being okay with more work with less pay, or any number of things that basically lead to a mediocre, subpar life. And 100%. I think that's what we're trying to...
You're 100% right. Settling emotionally, settling mentally, settling professionally, you will settle. You will actually go like this. Settle to the bottom. Just like if I put a bunch of dirt in a mason jar right now full of water, that dirt is going to settle at the bottom. And I feel like that kind of, this movement right here, I can see that dirt, if you will, kind of just moving around a little bit. And then that's
what down.
Yeah, I think that's, you know. Now, let me say this on the converse side of it. Working through difficult situations and working through a difficult leader and kind of being the bigger person and realizing this is not enough to push me out. this is probably, it might feel good emotionally, but it's not necessarily good on this side. There's some maturity there too to go, all right, I'm just going to have to deal with that, because we deal with difficult family members at Thanksgiving. So that, being mature and pressing through difficult leaders or difficult situations doesn't mean you're settling. So you got to have the maturity to know the difference between what is settling versus what is, maturing and being resilient and rising above. There's a difference there. And I just wanted to point that out. What we're describing is not settling. It's okay. Can I work my way through it? And sometimes I got to move on, and sometimes I need to stay and be okay with it.
Yeah, but the maturity is, to understand which there's two options always, and you have to. And by the way, if you apply some of your discernment and looking at situations through multiple lenses, again, that's an applicable skill set that can really help improve your life across.
Exactly right. It allows us to get out of the present, Scott, and look at the future and go, all right, I've got to have always this juxtaposition between what's the right thing to do in the now that sets me up for the next. Not just be like, now. I feel this way. Well, get over it, buttercup. Hardship and adversity is the fire that forges the steel. And understand the blacksmith, man, they take an inanimate piece of iron, stick it in the fire, and then pull it out and beat the ever-living crap out of it and repeat, fire beating. On the other end of it is a really awesome, usable tool. So I always want to point out that hitting the exit ramp sometimes is the worst thing you can do. Understand that we're all forged by the fire and the pounding. and there would have the maturity to realize, this is a season of forging and pounding. And on the other side of this, I'm really going to be better.
I love that. All right, Ken, where should people reach out to you? Now you're going to have a whole bunch of people calling in, trying to fix their life, fix their business. So where are they going to go?
Yeah, KenColeman.com is just an easy place to go to see where the show is. You can get the Ken Coleman Show wherever you listen to podcasts. It's also on YouTube. And there's phone numbers and ways for you to email your question in and all that. So that KenColeman.com is just the easiest place to connect and social and all that stuff.
Amazing. And like, honestly, man, congratulations on the work that you do, because again, live coaching is not easy. So anybody who's listening to this, go try and stump Ken. Go try and give him your best or your worst question. Because again, you probably follow a lot of people. You have all these people you look up to that you learn from, but to be able to do it live in real time is a whole other level. So I think that's super admirable. Yeah, no, seriously. Okay. One last thought or one last piece of wisdom or advice, something that you want to leave the audience with that you would tell your younger self.
I don't think I would tell my younger self anything, because I don't want to give my younger self a cheat code. I don't want to give my younger self the benefit of shortcut. And I've answered that question a lot. I've never answered it that way. And I'm just in a season right now where I believe that's my answer. I'm not trying to be contrarian to the question. Because I think that's the answer. I think that the struggle is what gives us the strength. And I just turned 50. And Lord willing, I'm not anywhere close to done. I am sitting here today talking to you, believe me, in my 50s and 60s. The next 20 years will be my greatest impact. I can't tell you what that is. I've learned a long time ago to stop trying to predict it or plan it. I'm on the right path. But I sit here today looking at you as a 50-year-old saying I wouldn't tell my 20-year-old self anything other than maybe keep on keeping on. Maybe that's what I wouldn't give advice. I would just say, keep on keeping on. I've managed to do that, but I just believe that all the struggles, and I can tell you struggle after struggle after struggle after struggle after struggle in my personal life, with my family, in my physical life, my professional life, mental. I could tell you some amazing battle stories. And every one of those were storms that I've been able to walk through. And as a result, that struggle has given me the strength to do what I'm uniquely wired to do now. And the struggles I face tomorrow set me up for the strength that I need 5 years from now, 10 years out. And so that's my real answer. I would just go, you got it, kid. Keep on keeping on. No extra shortcuts, because that would rob me of the struggle. And I think we have gotten way out of whack in this country as parents. And I'll raise my hand too. I don't want to pick on anybody. I'm talking to me. I don't want anybody to get offended. Let me provoke you to think. Don't get offended. My generation, we've been terrible at it. I'm raising 3 Gen Z teenagers, and I could tell you that if I were to do anything over again, I would have let them struggle more. It is the nature of parenting to remove the struggle, and now we've been marketed to remove the struggle, safety, 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 safety. And I think it is the experience with danger and failure that ultimately shapes us the best.